Yarusso. I live in Austin, Texas presently, although I grew up in New York and Connecticut and Massachusetts. And right now I run a website called AtariAge.com, and I also do a lot of PHP, MySQL development, and professional game development as well, mostly. Some of the projects I've worked on include PC and PS2 titles as well.
I heard you did Days X.
Yes, I worked on Deus Ex for the PC. And
what's Deus Ex?
Deus Ex is kind of a mix between an RPG and a first-person shooter, where it's very open-ended, and you could go about solving problems in multiple ways, which is one of the strengths of the game.
And who'd you work on that with?
I worked on that with Warren Spector, who has done a lot of very popular games in the past, including some of the old Ultima Underworld 1 and 2, games of that nature for Looking Glass Technologies.
And how long did it take to do that? That was a tremendous game.
It was about 3 years from start to finish, including designing the game all the way up through when it was finally published.
And what were you doing on your part of it?
I was one of the programmers in Deus Ex, one of 3 programmers. We used the Unreal Engine, so the hard part of the engine was done, and we just had to graft all the game-related systems onto that.
You're telling me that Deus Ex only took 3 programmers? That was incredible.
Yeah, 3 programmers, that's it. If you look at the credits of the game, you'll see just 3 programmers listed.
Wow.
Not including the Unreal team, but that was totally separate, which is paid a fortune for it, and they got to use it. But it did save us an incredible amount of time, and then we were able to focus on the gameplay elements, which is part of what helped us a lot. If we had to write an engine, the game would have been much less fun. It would have taken a lot longer, and I doubt it would have been nearly as good. Some of the other projects I worked on include the PS2 port of Deus Ex, which wasn't just a simple port, but we actually redid the entire interface, the control scheme, to make it work well with the controller, and that took over a year just to get that to work. And then I worked on some titles for Looking Glass Technology, including Flight Unlimited 2, British Open Championship Golf, which is probably the mostly unknown title. And then I went to Looking Glass to work at Junction Point here in Austin, Texas, but that project was canceled pretty early on.
Like, how'd you get into this career?
Pardon me?
How'd you get into this career?
Let's see. Well, I've always wanted to work in the video games ever since I've always wanted to work in the video game industry ever since I started playing the Ultima games from Fortune a long time ago. And I just had desires to work in RPGs of that nature. One day I was living up in Boston, Massachusetts, working on just boring insurance-related Windows applications. And an ex-girlfriend called me up and said, I've got this job that you might be interested in. It's for a multimedia company, and they're looking for a user interface programmer. I said, well, can you tell me the name of the company? These headhunters don't often like to tell you the name of the company because then you just go and bypass them entirely. But I knew her, so she told me it was Looking Glass Technologies. My jaw dropped to the floor. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I didn't even know they were in Boston at the time. So I said, hell yeah, sign me up. For an interview there. So I went there, I dressed up in a suit, which was totally inappropriate, but I didn't know this at the time for a game company. I'm sitting in the lobby and there's people walking in and out, barefoot, shorts, and I'm surprised I didn't see somebody in a bathroom.
It's a pretty easygoing job.
Yeah, so I was very out of place. But I interviewed with somebody who actually had done old Atari 2600 games back in the day. The interview went really well, and I was really nervous because I really wanted this position. Interviews for boring business applications weren't as exciting.
Yeah.
But this one I really wanted, so I was really nervous, and a week later they called me up and offered me the position, and that's how I got started.
After the interview, how did you feel?
Pardon me?
After the interview, how did you feel?
I felt good because it was great to get past the interview and actually get up there and talk to everyone. And that was just a waiting game after that. I felt it went really well, but you never know. I didn't know who else they were talking to. So it's just a few days anxiously waiting because I really wanted the position.
Did you have like a lot of ideas, plans to put into this job?
Well, for this game, it was the golf game I mentioned, British Open Championship Golf, and I've never played golf before.
Yeah.
And I wasn't interested in golf very much, but I was interested in working at Looking Glass and doing the user interface. A lot of the game had already been done, but they needed someone to come in and put some fires out because they hadn't done the user interface yet.
Yeah.
And I think they had lost one of their programmers or something happened where they needed someone to come in for the last few months. It was only supposed to be like a month or two's worth of work, and the game didn't ship for another 6+ months, which is typical in game development.
Yeah.
But I ended up doing the entire user interface with some of their artists in that game. But after that, I wanted to work on something called The Dark Project, which turned into a game that they ultimately released as Thief, which was an RPG, 3D RPG.
Was this
game.
Thief 1?
Yes, Thief 1. And it was the code name was The Dark Project.
Did you get to work on that?
No, I did not get to work on that because they were also working on a Voyager game based on Star Trek Voyager for Viacom. And at some point during the development of British Open Championship Golf, Viacom pulled the funding for the game and they had to cancel the project. So all the people that were on the Voyager project were put on other projects, including the Dark Project. So when my project finished, they already had all the slots for it. And I was offered a couple choices. I could go down to Austin, Texas, and work with Warren Spector on Junction Point, or I could stay and work on Flight Unlimited 2, finishing up Flight Unlimited 2, which I ended up doing a little bit of work on anyway, when they later canned our Austin office. But I thought the Junction Point project was much more interested in working in flight simulator.
Are you happy now that you made that decision?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Would you have any recommendations for other people that are trying to get into that industry?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to actually write some games yourself. I mean, they don't have to be, big extravagant productions by any means, but even simple games just to get started. See if it's something you have the aptitude for.
What about modders? Making mods?
Even making mods is a good way, especially with the games now that have scripting languages, which will get your feet wet programming. And you can still be really creative because a lot of these games are very extensible in terms of what you can do. I mean, you can build a complete game just by modifying it pretty much these days. So, but writing a game, even small games for smaller systems, maybe some of the old classic gaming systems, because a lot of what you learn will still apply later on.
You're saying people can write games for the older classic game systems?
Yeah, there's a huge community writing games for everything going all the way back to the Odyssey 2, the Atari 2600.
Give us an example.
One example would be Thrust Plus, which is a game that was originally on the Commodore 64 and then converted to the Atari 2600 by Thomas Janzer, somebody in Germany. There's a lot of classic game programmers in Germany and Europe, which is pretty interesting. But it's a really difficult game to get working on Thrust 100, and you did a phenomenal job on it. And that's one of the more popular ones over the years. It sold hundreds of copies, which may not sound like a lot in terms of modern game development, but for the classic gaming scene, which is not huge, it's a fair number.
So, what's your favorite classic game and classic game system?
It would have to be the Atari 2600 because that's the first system that I had when I was growing up. And I don't remember exactly when we got it. It must have been probably 1978 or so. And it was one of the few systems I had because we were poor. We couldn't afford to go out and buy everything that came with the television and ColecoVision and all those other systems. So I had the 2600 for many years. And it was in everyone's homes back then. And that's just what got me interested in video games and pretty much led to everything else later on down the road.
Have you ever programmed anything for the 2600?
I have not programmed anything for the 2600 yet. I would like to, and the tools today are fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of, the programmers have much better tools than they did when Atari and Activision and all those companies were producing games.
So somebody today who wanted to make a 2600 game would find it much easier than it was 30 years ago?
Yeah. The companies back then were very secretive, protecting their trade secrets, and Atari even sued Activision to prevent them from making games. Unfortunately, lost.
Where would they go to get information about this?
Today, you can get information. I run a website, AtariAge.com, and we have a programming section for each of the different consoles. 2600 has the most information by far. And we have active forums where a lot of the homebrew authors actually post, and they also have blogs where they post their development diaries as they're developing the games. There's also something called the Stella list. Stella is the code name for the Atari 2600 while it was under development. So if you ever see the term Stella that refer to video games, it's usually the Atari 2600. So there's a Stella programmer's mailing list, and a lot of very technical information gets passed along there between the authors as well.
So, what are your views on new generation systems?
I've got just about every new generation or recent generation system except for the Xbox. I haven't picked up an Xbox 360 yet.
Are you going to?
It's possible. I may. I mean, I'm looking into it.
Is there a reason you haven't?
Well, it's the first of the next generation system to come out, so I wanted to see what Sony and Nintendo did. And now with E3 behind us, they put their cards on the table, so I probably won't get a PS3. The Revolution, well, not the Revolution, but the Wii, I'll definitely get, no questions about it. And possibly the 360. I've always gotten at least two of each generation that comes out, the systems. But the 360 does have some compelling games on the place, so I'll probably get one of those.
Did you have two of the last generation?
Yeah, the PS2 and the GameCube.
What'd you like on the GameCube?
A lot of the Nintendo-specific games, the Zelda games, Mario, Sunshine, Metroid games. I've got one or two of the Mario.
You ever look
Party
at Animal
games.
Crossing?
Pardon me?
Animal
No, I
Crossing?
did not. A lot of friends love Animal Crossing. It's one I just didn't pick up though. It would have been fun. That's another one of those addicting games you can put a lot of time into.
What about the handhelds?
I'm sorry?
The handhelds.
Yes, I have a Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
I don't have a DS yet. I do have an SP, Game Boy SP. I've got, of course, the old links.
Have you heard about the DS Lite?
Yes, I'll probably get a DS Lite. It's much less clunky, better screen, so I probably will buy it. And a lot of really great games on it.
Do you prefer consoles or handhelds?
Consoles, definitely. I mean, handhelds are great, like if you're traveling, you're on an airplane, or you're waiting somewhere. You have a time like that where you can't have a whole console. And they're also great now for the networking. With the PSP, I do have a PSP, and the DS both have great wireless networking capability. So it's a lot easier to get a group of people together. Like I saw people sitting around a table like this, playing a bunch of DSs yesterday or today, and that's a lot of fun. And before you had to deal with a lot of wires and the networking didn't work properly. Now it's so much more seamless.
What's your favorite PSP game?
I don't have a lot of PSP. I bought a lot when it first came out. Probably, what's that game? Mercury, which is really good. You have that one? Yeah, it's a fun game.
Finally, what are your opinions on the Midwest Gaming Classic?
Midwest Gaming Classic had a blast. It was larger than 2004, which we also attended. Very well spread out, organized very well, and we had a lot of people coming through. And I know we introduced a lot of people to the homebrew scene and classic gaming. Because a lot of people come in to hear about the show and video games, and they didn't realize people are still playing these old games like the 2600 and 5200, for 30 years down the road, 30 years after they came out. A lot of fun, a lot of energy, good energy, and a lot of great speakers. The museum and the arcade was fantastic, although unfortunately I was stuck behind my booth most of the time, so I didn't get a chance to play it.
Yeah.
But it's a great show, and I've had a good time.
Do you plan on coming back next year?
Yes. I mean, as long as things stay pretty much the same, they keep improving the show, absolutely.
Would you be willing to be a speaker next year? If they ask you.
Yeah, I don't know. That I have to think about.
All right. Well.
Next year.
That
If they ask